Imagine building something from absolutely nothing in your parents' garage, watching it grow into one of the biggest companies on the planet, and then being thrown out of it by the very people you hired to help you run it. Most people would never recover from that kind of humiliation. But one man didn't just recover. He came back and built something even bigger. This is the story of Steve Jobs. He never even knew his biological parents. He was given up for adoption at birth in 1955 and raised by a working-class couple, Paul and Clara Jobs, in California. They weren't wealthy people, but they made his biological mother a promise that they would send him to college one day, and they kept that promise, even though it meant spending almost their entire life savings. Jobs enrolled at Reed College, but within just one semester, he dropped out. Not because he failed, but because he couldn't bear watching his parents drain their savings on classes he didn't feel were worth it. For the next year and a half, he didn't have a dorm room or a real place to live. He slept on the floors of friends' rooms. He returned empty Coca-Cola bottles for the 5-cent deposit just to buy food. Every Sunday, he'd walk 7 miles across town to get one free meal at a local Hare Krishna temple. He later said those were some of the most creative years of his life, because with nothing to lose, he only took classes he genuinely found interesting, including a calligraphy class that years later directly inspired the beautiful typography Apple computers became famous for. In 1976, at just 21 years old, Jobs partnered with his friend Steve Wozniak, a brilliant engineer. Walking out of the Jobs family garage, they built and sold their first computer circuit boards. That small operation became Apple Computer. Within just 4 years, Apple went public, and by 1983, it had grown into a company worth over $1 billion. Jobs,
still in his 20s, became one of the wealthiest and most recognized young entrepreneurs in the country. But success inside the company didn't stay smooth. As Apple grew, disagreements grew with it, especially between Jobs and the CEO he himself had helped recruit, John Sculley. Their visions for the company's future clashed constantly. In 1985, the board of directors, made up largely of people Jobs had personally hired, sided against him. He was stripped of his responsibilities and effectively pushed out of the company he had built from a garage. Jobs later described that period as devastating, watching the thing he had dedicated his entire adult life to be taken away from him, in public, by people he had trusted. Most people would have quietly disappeared after a fall like that. Jobs didn't. Within the same year, he founded a brand new computer company called Next, focused on high-end machines for education and business. Around the same time, he also purchased a small computer graphics division from filmmaker George Lucas for just $10 million. That tiny division would eventually become Pixar Animation Studios, the studio behind Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and some of the most beloved animated films in history. Meanwhile, back at Apple, things weren't going well without him. By the mid-1990s, the company was struggling badly, losing money, losing direction, and edging closer to bankruptcy. In 1997, over a decade after being forced out, Apple made a decision that shocked the industry. They bought Next and brought Steve Jobs back. He didn't just return quietly. He took over as CEO and completely rebuilt the company from the inside out, simplifying the product line, overhauling the culture, and betting everything on bold new design. Under his leadership, Apple launched the iMac, then the iPod, then the iPhone in 2007, a single device that would go on to redefine not just Apple, but the entire global technology industry. By the time Steve Jobs passed away in 2011, Apple had become the most valuable company in the world, a title it has held for much of the time since. The man who was publicly fired from the company he built ended up coming back to create the very device that changed how billions of people communicate, work, and live their daily lives.